May 1st, 2026, 11 p.m. Somewhere in a conference room, the people controlling Spirit Airlines are staring at a spreadsheet. On the table, a $500 million government rescue package, 17,000 jobs, millions of passengers, America's cheapest airline. They open the numbers. They run the math. And then they make a decision. Not based on employees, not based on passengers, not based on the airline, based on one single question. What pays more? Saving Spirit or killing it? Less than 24 hours later, at 3 a.m. on May 2nd, 2026, Spirit Airlines was gone. Flights canceled, passengers stranded in airports overnight, employees discovering the collapse through text alerts before management even called them. 17,000 jobs erased overnight. And the investors who made that decision, they still got paid. This is not a story about an airline that failed. This is a story about an airline that was sacrificed. For years, Spirit Airlines was the most mocked airline in America. The seats were cramped, the fees were relentless. The internet treated Spirit like a punchline. But here's what those jokes missed. When Delta charged $500, Spirit charged $79. When American Airlines quoted $400, Spirit quoted $89. And that wasn't just good for Spirit's passengers, it was good for everyone. Because every cheap Spirit ticket forced the entire industry to lower prices too. People who never flew Spirit still benefited from its existence. By the early 2020s, Spirit was carrying tens of millions of passengers a year. Students, immigrant families, low-income workers flying home for Christmas. People for whom Spirit wasn't a choice. It was the only option. But inside the company, executives already knew something the public didn't. Spirit's business model ran on razor-thin margins. A fuel spike could wipe profits in weeks. Competition was intensifying, and the major airlines had started copying Spirit's ultra-cheap pricing. The company was profitable, but fragile. Then, an escape route appeared. In 2022, JetBlue offered to buy Spirit Airlines for $3.8 billion. Inside Spirit, this looked like salvation. The airline gets acquired, shareholders get paid, employees get absorbed into a bigger carrier. Everyone wins. But the U.S. Department of Justice disagreed. The DOJ argued Spirit was too critical for budget travelers to disappear into a premium airline. They sued to block the deal. And in January 2024, a federal judge agreed. Merger blocked. JetBlue walks away. And this is where most people think the story ends. It doesn't. This is where it starts. Because that court ruling didn't just kill a merger. It issued Spirit Airlines a slow death sentence. Without the merger, the airline was trapped. Too fragile to absorb shocks, too undercapitalized to compete long-term, and already bleeding cash. But while Spirit was collapsing, something was happening inside the executive offices that almost nobody reported. November 2024. Spirit Airlines is burning cash. Bankruptcy lawyers are on standby. Employees are quietly terrified. And on November 12, 2024, CEO Ted Christie approved a $3.8 million retention bonus for himself, 6 days before filing for bankruptcy. 6 days! While lawyers were finalizing the Chapter 11 documents, while employees had no idea what was coming, while passengers were still booking flights, the CEO secured millions. The official explanation? Retaining leadership through restructuring. But let's look at the math. In 2024, Spirit Airlines lost more than $1 billion. That same year, Ted Christie received more than $8 million in total compensation. The airline lost $1 billion. The CEO made $8 million. And somehow, that wasn't even the most shocking part. Because after bankruptcy, Spirit Airlines stopped functioning like an airline and started functioning like a financial asset. March 2025, Spirit emerges from bankruptcy. The headlines called it a recovery. The restructuring documents told a different story. Wall Street had taken control. Investment firms, including Citadel, Ares Management, and Cyrus Capital, converted nearly $795 million of debt into ownership stakes. They injected another $350 million into the airline. In exchange, they became Spirit Airlines. And that changed everything. Because here's the thing nobody says out loud. Airlines think about routes, passengers, employees, and survival. Distressed debt investors think about recovery rates, liquidation value, and maximizing returns. Those are not the same thing. They are not even close to the same thing. And the moment Wall Street took control of Spirit Airlines, the airline's fate was no longer in the hands of people who cared about flying. Then Ted Christie disappeared. April 7th, 2025. The CEO resigned, 13 months before Spirit collapsed completely. But before leaving, he secured another severance package worth at least $1.5 million. By the time the final collapse came, Ted Christie had walked away with nearly $10 million. The employees got uncertainty. The CEO got paid. And now Spirit's survival depended entirely on one question. Was the airline still worth more alive than dead? March 2026. Spirit's restructuring team finalizes a new survival plan. The plan is aggressive. It could work, but it depends on one critical number. Jet fuel at $2.24 per gallon. Then the Middle East crisis escalated. Oil markets panicked. And within weeks, jet fuel hit $4.51 per gallon, a 101% increase. For legacy carriers, this was painful. For Spirit, it was catastrophic. The airline suddenly faced more than $100 million in unexpected fuel costs in just 2 months. Cash, it simply didn't have. At this point, most people assumed Spirit was finished. But it wasn't. Not yet. Because there was still one final chance. And what happened to that chance is the part of this story that should haunt you. April 2026. The Trump administration puts a $500 million rescue package on the table. The terms were aggressive. The government would receive a major ownership stake. There were discussions about military transport contracts. The restructuring conditions were controversial. But the money was real. 17,000 jobs were still on the line. Then came the meeting. May 1st, 2026, late evening. The firms controlling Spirit sit down to review the government's final offer. They open the spreadsheets. They calculate what Spirit is worth alive, restructured, smaller, fighting to survive. Then they calculate what Spirit is worth dead, planes sold, assets liquidated, creditors paid from the proceeds. The numbers tell a clear story. Liquidation pays more. So they reject the bailout. Not because they couldn't save Spirit, because saving Spirit would reduce their recovery. Let that land for a moment. 17,000 human beings, families, lives, careers, weighed against a recovery model. And the recovery model won. Late May 1st, 2026. Most of America has no idea what is about to happen. Airports are operating normally. Flights are boarding. Families are checking bags for early morning connections. Nobody knows. At 3 a.m. Eastern Time, Spirit Airlines officially shut down. Immediately. Completely. Within hours, Spirit's customer service lines stopped answering entirely. Departure boards across the country filled with cancellation alerts. Families who had gone to sleep with confirmed reservations woke up stranded, with no flights, no refunds, and no support. Some employees found out through internal alerts and social media before their own managers called them. 17,000 jobs gone before sunrise. And behind closed doors, the liquidation had already begun. Planes being valued for sale, assets being distributed, recovery calculations being finalized. Because in the world of distressed investing, even a dead company still has value. Especially a dead company. So who actually killed Spirit Airlines? Was it the DOJ regulators who blocked the merger that might have saved the company? Was it Ted Christie, the CEO who collected nearly $10 million, then quietly exited 13 months before the final collapse? Was it the fuel crisis that shattered a restructuring plan built on assumptions that couldn't survive a geopolitical shock? Or was it the investment firms? The firms that took over Spirit in bankruptcy, injected hundreds of millions, then rejected a government rescue because the liquidation math was better? Here's the honest answer. Spirit Airlines died from a chain reaction of decisions, each one made by people who were technically following the rules. The DOJ was doing its job. Ted Christie had employment contracts. The investors had fiduciary duties. Every decision was legal. Every decision was defensible. And every decision moved Spirit one step closer to collapse. But in the final moment, there was one decision that sealed it. On May 1st, 2026, the people controlling Spirit Airlines looked at 17,000 jobs, weighed them against the liquidation spreadsheet, and chose the spreadsheet. That wasn't turbulence. That was a calculation. Spirit Airlines is gone. 17,000 people lost their jobs. Millions lost America's cheapest airline. Routes that Spirit served are already seeing higher fares. Families who depended on Spirit are now priced out of flying entirely. And the firms that rejected the rescue deal, they recovered money from the collapse. Because that's how the system works. The airline needed passengers to survive. The investors needed returns. And when those two things stopped aligning, the passengers lost. Modern corporate disasters aren't always about failure. Sometimes they're about incentives. And in the final hours of Spirit Airlines, the incentives rewarded death. Remember that the next time someone tells you the market always gets it right.